Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. Lost human colony found by aliens, the shocking truth they never expected. The mysterious discovery began when the Xerian fleet, known for its vast exploration across the galaxy, encountered something that defied all expectations. They had charted star systems far and wide, collecting information on every planet they came across, but on this particular mission they stumbled upon something beyond their understanding, a discovery that would forever change their perception of the universe. Captain Rollins sat in the command chair of the Xerian flagship, his eyes scanning the star map in front of him. They were on the edge of their territory, a place few had dared to venture. The sensors had detected a planet that wasn't marked on any of the star charts. It wasn't supposed to exist, it wasn't supposed to be there, yet here it was, a small, rocky planet floating silently on the outer rim of the galaxy. Officer Isha, the captain said, addressing a young officer at the sensor station, her voice filled with disbelief, "The planet, it's not in any of our records. It shouldn't be here." Ron's interest was immediately piqued. "What do you mean it shouldn't be here?" he asked, his voice calm but laced with curiosity. Isha turned to him, her eyes wide with confusion. "The coordinates don't match any known system. It's as if it just appeared out of nowhere." Ron's mind raced. A planet that wasn't in any records, appearing out of thin air, was a mystery that could not be ignored. "Prepare the landing party," he ordered. "We need to investigate this immediately." Within an hour, a small team was ready to explore the planet. Ron, Isha, and a few seasoned explorers suited up and boarded the shuttle. Their mission was clear: find out why this planet existed, who or what might have left it behind, and why it was hidden from the galaxy's knowledge. As the shuttle descended toward the planet's surface, Ron felt a strange sense of unease. The air was thick with tension, no one spoke during the descent, and the only sounds were the hum of the shuttle's engines and the occasional beeping of the instruments. The planet below was rocky and barren, with deep valleys and towering cliffs. But there was something else, something unsettling. The shuttle touched down softly on the planet's surface, and the crew disembarked, their boots sinking slightly into the dirt. The planet felt alive, an odd sensation that Ron couldn't shake. There was a presence here, something ancient, something that had been waiting. They stood in a clearing surrounded by tall, jagged rocks. The air was still, almost too still, and a heavy silence hung around them, as if the planet itself were holding its breath. "Let's split up in search of signs of life or any structures," Ron suggested. His voice was steady, but his heart beat a little faster than usual. There was something wrong here, something that didn't sit right with him. The team spread out, scanning the area. Hours passed, and there was nothing, no signs of civilization, no sounds, as if the planet had been abandoned for centuries. Just as they were about to give up, Officer Isha called out, her voice shaky with excitement. "Captain, you need to see this." Ron hurried over to where Isha was standing. Her face was pale, her hand shaking as she pointed toward the horizon. Half hidden in the shadows of a massive cliff was something they hadn't expected to find, an ancient city. Its stone structures were partially buried in the earth, yet these buildings weren't just any ruins, they were perfectly preserved, as if they had been waiting for someone to uncover them. Ron's heart skipped a beat. "What is this place?" he whispered under his breath. The structures before them were unlike anything he had ever seen. They were vast, stretching for miles, with tall spires and intricate carvings on every surface. The technology embedded in the structures was far more advanced than any Xerian design. It was clear that whoever had built this city was far ahead of their time. As the team approached the entrance to the city, the silence grew even heavier. The air around them seemed to shimmer, as though the very atmosphere had become thick with the weight of forgotten memories. The city was frozen in time, waiting for them to uncover its secrets. Isha, ever the curious one, took the lead and carefully stepped toward one of the doors. It was an ancient stone doorway, covered in intricate symbols that looked eerily familiar. She ran her fingers over the carvings, and suddenly the door began to open with a low rumbling sound. The team stood frozen, staring in awe as the massive stone door creaked open, revealing a dark, hollow space inside. The air that spilled from within was cold and stale, carrying a strange metallic scent. Ron felt a chill run down his spine as he stepped forward, his hand instinctively reaching for the blaster at his side. He wasn't sure why he felt so uneasy. This was supposed to be an exciting discovery, after all, but something in his gut told him that this wasn't just a simple lost city, there was something far more dangerous hidden within its walls. "Stay alert," he ordered quietly to the crew. "We don't know what we're walking into." The group slowly advanced into the darkened interior of the city, their footsteps echoing in the silence. The walls were lined with more symbols, some of which seemed to pulse with a faint light. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. It felt as if they were trespassing in a place that had been abandoned for a reason, a place that was never meant to be found. The deeper they ventured, the more the team realized that they weren't just exploring an ancient settlement. They were uncovering the remnants of a lost civilization, a civilization that had once been part of the galaxy, and yet somehow had vanished without a trace. The question now was, what had happened? As they moved through one of the grand corridors, the sound of a low hum filled the air. The walls began to vibrate slightly, as if the city itself were awakening. The sound sent a shiver down Ron's spine. "What is that?" Isha whispered, her eyes wide with fear. Ron didn't answer, his mind raced, his instincts on high alert. Something was happening here, something that couldn't be explained. The planet, the city, and the strange energy, they were all connected in ways he couldn't yet understand. But one thing was certain, they had uncovered something far greater than they had ever imagined, and the discovery was only the beginning of a much larger mystery. The team continued to venture deeper into the mysterious city, each step taking them further into the unknown. The atmosphere grew heavier as they moved through the corridors, their footsteps echoing against stone walls that seemed to hum with an eerie energy. Strange carvings adorned the walls, symbols that pulsed faintly, almost as if they were alive. Their presence felt otherworldly, like a hidden message meant to be uncovered only by those brave enough to enter. Ron's mind raced with questions. How had this city been hidden for so long? Why was it buried under the surface of the planet, waiting to be found? And most importantly, who or what had created it? "I've never seen anything like this," muttered Officer Isha, her voice filled with awe. "The architecture, the technology, it's so advanced, it's almost like it's not even from this time." Ron nodded grimly. "It doesn't make sense. This place is older than any known civilization, and yet it looks like it was built just yesterday." Their lights flickered as they moved through the darkened corridors, illuminating the intricate designs on the walls. The air was thick with the smell of decay, and the oppressive silence pressed in on them. There was no sign of life, only their own breathing and footsteps. Finally, they came to a large, open chamber at the heart of the city. The ceiling was impossibly high, adorned with glowing crystals embedded in the stone. In the center of the chamber stood a massive pedestal, upon which sat a strange metallic object that shimmered with an eerie light. "This is it," Ron whispered, his voice filled with awe and unease. "This is what we've been looking for." Isha stepped forward cautiously, her hand hovering just above the object. "What is it?" "It looks otherworldly." Ron took a deep breath. "It looks like some kind of artifact, but it's unlike anything I've ever seen. This technology is far beyond anything the Xerian Empire has ever created." Suddenly, the object on the pedestal began to pulse, its light growing brighter. A low rumble filled the chamber, and the ground beneath them trembled. The team instinctively reached for their weapons, their hearts pounding in their chests. "Something's wrong," Isha said, her voice shaking with fear. It's activating." Before Ron could respond, the entire chamber seemed to come alive. The symbols on the walls glowed brighter, and the air hummed with energy. The artifact on the pedestal lifted slightly, as if it were alive, and a strange holographic projection began to flicker to life before them. The projection revealed an image of a humanoid figure, a tall being with sharp features and glowing eyes. Its face was both familiar and alien, its expression cold and calculating. "I am one of the elders," the figure spoke in a language that was entirely unfamiliar. Yet, as if by instinct, Ron understood the message: "You are the ones who have awoken us. You are the ones who have found the hidden truth." The figure paused, its gaze shifting to the group of explorers. "The humans, the lost ones, they were never meant to be found. But now that you have discovered us, there is no turning back." Ron's breath caught in his throat. "What are you talking about? Who are the humans? What happened to them?" The figure's eyes glowed brighter. "The humans were once a powerful race, a force that could have dominated the galaxy. But their ambition was their downfall. They built too much, reached too far, and in the end, they caused their own destruction." The figure's voice grew more intense. "We tried to save them. We hid their last remaining colony, but it was too late. The galaxy had already turned against them, and now the consequences of their actions will haunt you all." The hologram flickered, and the figure's face twisted into something resembling a smile. "You may have found the humans, but you will not survive their legacy." With that, the projection disappeared, leaving the room in silence. The hum of energy faded, but the oppressive weight of the message lingered in the air. Isha was the first to speak. What does it mean? Who were these humans, and what did they do?" Ron's mind raced. The artifact, the warnings, the messages, none of it made sense. Everything they thought they knew was being turned upside down. Who were these humans that had been hidden away by an ancient race, and why have they been erased from the galaxy's history? He asked, turning to his team. "We need to find out more. We need to know who these humans were and what their legacy means for us. This discovery, this city, it's just the beginning. There's a much bigger picture at play here." Isha nodded, her face filled with determination. "But what about the warning? The elder said we wouldn't survive." Ron clenched his fists, staring at the empty pedestal where the artifact had been. "We've come this far, Isha. We can't stop now. If there's one thing I know about the Zerans, it's that we never back down from a challenge. Whatever danger lies ahead, we'll face it head-on, and we'll uncover the truth, no matter the cost." The team exchanged uncertain glances, yet they all knew one thing for sure: they were in this together, facing a mystery far greater than they could have ever imagined. As they turned to leave the chamber, the hum of the city grew louder, and the walls seemed to shift as if the ancient city itself were waking up. Something had been triggered, something that was beyond their control. And whatever it was only a matter of time before the galaxy would learn what lay hidden on this forgotten world. The team moved cautiously through the labyrinthine hallways of the ancient city, the eerie silence broken only by the sound of their footsteps. The holographic message from the elder had left them with more questions than answers, and the weight of the warning pressed heavily on their minds. They had thought they were uncovering a lost piece of history, but now they realized they might have stumbled upon something far more dangerous than they could have ever imagined. Ron led the group through twisting corridors, his mind racing with the implications of what they had just witnessed. The elder's warning echoed in his mind: the humans were never meant to be found. What did it mean, and why had these humans been hidden away? He couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the verge of uncovering a secret that could change the fate of the galaxy. "I don't like this," muttered Isha, her voice low. "We were supposed to be uncovering lost technology, not waking up ancient threats." Ron glanced back at her. "We don't know that yet. It could be just a warning, a story from the past, but we have to keep going. There's too much at stake now." The team gathered around a central chamber deep within the city, a room filled with ancient consoles and displays that flickered with weak light. The walls were adorned with strange, shifting patterns, as though the city itself were alive. At the far end of the room, a large doorway stood, its surface engraved with the same symbols they had seen throughout the city. The lingering energy from the artifact created an oppressive atmosphere that made everyone uneasy. "Do you think this is where the answers are?" Isha asked, her voice laced with both excitement and fear. Ron nodded. "It has to be. This place feels important, there's something hidden here, something we haven't uncovered yet. Let's see what's behind that door." The team approached the massive doorway, their footsteps slow and cautious. As they neared, the symbols on the door began to glow faintly, reacting to their presence. Ron reached out and placed his hand on the door's surface. Immediately, the symbols began to shift, revealing a hidden pattern beneath. With a low rumble, the door slowly began to open, revealing a dark chamber beyond. The air grew colder as they stepped inside, their torches casting long shadows against the walls. The room was vast, filled with rows of old machines and relics, but it was the central object that caught Ron's attention, the same glowing crystal from the hologram. It hovered above a pedestal, pulsing with an unnatural energy. "What is this?" Isha whispered, her eyes wide with awe. Ron stepped forward cautiously, his hand outstretched. "It looks like the core of the entire city. This is what powers everything, if we can figure out how it works." His words trailed off as he reached the pedestal, his fingers brushing against the crystal. The moment his skin made contact, the room seemed to come alive. A low hum filled the air, and the crystal glowed brighter, casting an eerie light across the room. Ron staggered back, his heart racing as the overwhelming power radiated from the crystal. "Get away from it!" Isha shouted, but it was too late. The walls around them began to tremble, and the floor cracked open beneath their feet. Ron looked up just in time to see the symbols on the walls shifting, forming new patterns. The chamber appeared to be reacting to the crystal's energy, as if some ancient mechanism were being triggered. The air grew thick with tension as the ground continued to shake, and the machines lining the walls hummed to life, their dormant circuits activating with a surge of energy. The faint hum from the crystal intensified, and soon a low voice filled the room, an alien voice speaking in a language none of them understood. Ron's heart pounded in his chest, he couldn't understand the words, but the tone was unmistakable, it was a warning, just like the message from the Elder. "We need to get out of here," Isha cried, her eyes wide with fear. Before anyone could react, the voice spoke again, this time in a language that resonated deep within their minds. Though they had no explanation for how they understood, the words were clear: "You have awakened the last hope." A chill ran down Ron's spine. The last hope. What does that mean? Is this some kind of message left behind by the humans, or something else entirely? The crystal's glow grew even brighter, and the walls around them pulsed with life. The entire room began to warp, its very structure bending as if it were a living entity. Ron felt the ground shift beneath him and barely managed to keep his balance. "Stay close," he ordered, his voice sharp with urgency. "We need to leave now." The team scrambled to escape, but the exit was blocked by a massive energy field that had appeared in the doorway. They were trapped. "What's happening?" Isha gasped, her voice trembling with fear. Ron turned to her, his mind racing. He didn't have all the answers, but one thing was clear: this city, this artifact, and the messages they had uncovered were not merely remnants of a lost civilization, they were part of something far larger, something that was awakening again after eons of silence. "We've activated something we shouldn't have," he said grimly. "And now we have to deal with the consequences." The hum of the crystal intensified, and the air around them seemed to warp, as if reality itself were being distorted. Whatever lay beyond the glowing crystal was coming to life, and it was not going to be easy to stop. As the team struggled to find a way out, they realized one thing: the galaxy was about to learn just how dangerous the legacy of the humans really was, and the discovery they had made could change everything. As the energy field around the entrance flared brightly, Ron and his team were pushed back by an overwhelming force. The air was thick with power, and it felt as though the very fabric of reality was beginning to tear. The hum of the crystal grew louder, almost deafening, vibrating through their bones. The temperature in the chamber dropped sharply, and their breath became visible in the cold air. Isha was the first to break the silence. "We need to get out, Ron. This place, it's too dangerous." Ron swallowed hard, his eyes locked on the shimmering barrier blocking their exit. His mind raced as he tried to piece together what was happening. He could feel the power from the crystal feeding into the walls, into the machines, and possibly into something far larger, something waiting to be unleashed. I know, Ron muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. "But how do we escape before it's too late?" Before anyone could respond, a sudden crack sounded from above, followed by a massive tremor that shook the entire room. The walls bent and warped, as if the city itself were coming alive. Lights flickered wildly, casting eerie shadows that danced across the chamber. It felt as if time were warping around them, and the air pulsed with a strange energy. "Look!" Isha cried, pointing to the far end of the room. A massive structure had appeared from the shadows, seemingly out of nowhere. It was a giant metallic frame, ancient yet pristine, surrounded by intricate carvings that glowed with the same unnatural light as the crystal. The structure pulsed with energy, clearly connected to the power source. Ron's heart skipped a beat as he realized the truth. "This isn't just a city," he whispered heavily. "It's a weapon." It was as though the city had been built not merely to house a forgotten civilization, but to act as a conduit for something far more powerful, a weapon designed to unleash unimaginable destruction. The energy from the crystal had awakened it. Whatever it was, Ron turned to the rest of the team. "Get back. We don't know what that thing is or what it's going to do." But it was too late. As the team began to retreat, a wave of energy surged through the room, causing the metallic structure to hum and vibrate as if it were alive. The glowing symbols on the walls flickered, shifting into a new formation, and then, in an instant, a large, cylindrical object shot out from the structure, floating in midair. Ron's breath caught in his throat. The object looked like a massive vessel, sleek, aerodynamic, resembling something between a battleship and a shuttle, with pulsating energy shields surrounding it. "Is that a ship?" Isha asked, her voice filled with disbelief. Ron nodded slowly. "Yes, and not just any ship. This is a human battleship." The realization hit them all at once. They had discovered the last remnant of a forgotten human fleet. The ship, hidden for centuries, was now awakening in response to their presence. It was no longer dormant, it was alive. The ship's hull shimmered with an iridescent glow, and a low rumble began to emanate from within, as if the ship were coming to life, slowly powering up its ancient engines. The temperature in the room dropped even further, and the air felt electrically charged, humming with raw energy. The vessel's enormous engines began to glow, casting a bright blue light into the room. Suddenly, a series of mechanical arms emerged from the ship's frame. They moved with precision, connecting cables and activating ship systems. "This can't be real," Isha murmured, her eyes wide with shock. Ron felt a chill run down his spine. A ship was designed for one thing, war. He could feel it in his bones, its energy, its presence, unmistakable. This is a weapon that has been forgotten by time, but is now awakening, hungry for something. He could almost hear its call, urging him to understand what he had unleashed. Before Ron could speak, the ship's systems powered up completely. A series of ancient words flashed across the walls, symbols and writings they had never seen before. Then a voice, low and resonant, boomed throughout the chamber, "The legacy of humanity returns." The voice was deep, almost mechanical, yet unmistakably human. It filled their minds, resonating with a power they could not comprehend. It was as if the ship itself had become conscious, aware of its surroundings, and aware of the aliens who had uncovered it. Ron stepped back, his mind spinning, as the voice continued, "We were not forgotten. We were hidden, and now you will see why." The air in the room crackled with energy, and the ship's power grew steadily. The reality of what was happening sank in. The galaxy had once thought the humans were weak, primitive, long lost to the sands of time. But now, they were about to witness the power of a human fleet that had been waiting, hidden away, for the right moment to strike. "Get ready," Ron said, his voice strained with urgency. "We've just awoken something, and we can't stop it now." The ship, once dormant and silent, now hummed with energy. Its systems activated one by one, and the weapons on board powered up, preparing for something that would soon be unleashed. They had uncovered the lost human colony, but what they didn't know was that it wasn't just a colony, it was a weapon, one that had been waiting to be rediscovered, and now it was time for the galaxy to find out just how dangerous humans could be. As the hum of the ancient warship grew louder, the entire team stood frozen, staring at the ship now fully powered and prepared for an unknown threat. The walls around them were no longer just ancient relics, they were part of a larger mechanism, a complex web connecting the ship to the city's power grid. Every crack, every pulse of light from the vessel, intensified the tension in the air, as if the galaxy itself held its breath in anticipation. Ron's hand instinctively went to his weapon, though he knew it would be useless against the sheer power contained within the ship. He turned to his team, his mind racing, his heart pounding. The words spoken by the ship echoed in his ears, "We were not forgotten. We were hidden, and now you will see why." The voice was deep and ominous, a declaration rather than a warning. "Keel, get to the control room," Ron ordered, trying to sound calm. "We need to figure out how to shut this down before it's too late." But as soon as the words left his mouth, the room shook violently, a deafening roar filled the air. The ship's massive engines activated with terrifying force, shaking the ground beneath them. The floor cracked and sections of the ceiling crumbled, sending dust and debris falling everywhere. The ship was preparing to leave. As the team stumbled, trying to keep their balance amid the tremors, panic spread across their faces, but Ron's mind stayed sharp. "I think we've already lost control," he said, his voice low and full of dread. He pointed to the far wall, where a massive energy beam had begun to coalesce. The ship's power had somehow turned the room into a weaponized control center, capable of unleashing its wrath at a moment's notice. The blue beam of energy surged toward the ceiling, cutting through the rock as if it were butter. It hit a point deep within the structure, and for a brief moment, everything fell silent. Then the chamber seemed to warp and twist, as though time itself were bending under the force of the ship's energy. The walls around them hummed, as if the ship had connected with something far deeper beneath the surface. Ron understood immediately, the ship wasn't just powered by energy, it was linked to the planet's very core. It could draw upon the planet's resources, draining it and turning it into a devastating weapon. This was a galactic-scale threat, and they were standing at its heart. Suddenly, the rumbling stopped. The quiet was unbearable. Without warning, the ground beneath them shifted again. This time, it wasn't just a tremor, it was something far worse. The walls cracked open, revealing enormous launch platforms that had once been dormant. Massive hatches lifted, revealing an arsenal of weapons unlike anything Ron had ever seen. The ship had more power than he could fathom. Then came the roar of engines. "Get to cover!" Ron shouted, but it was too late. The warship, now fully operational, began to lift off the ground. It rose with incredible speed, its colossal engines lighting up the entire room as it ascended, tearing through the structure that had once kept it hidden. The walls buckled and collapsed, debris raining down as the ship moved through the air. Its massive silhouette cast ominous shadows over everything, like a colossal predator awakening from centuries of slumber, hungry for something far greater. Ron's mind raced, he knew the ship's next move, it wouldn't stop here. "Get back to the surface!" Ron shouted. "We have to warn the others. This ship isn't just a relic, it's a force of nature." The team scrambled to follow his order as the ship's engines roared to life, the air crackling with energy and a low hum reverberating through the ground as the ship ascended higher and higher, its massive silhouette cutting through the sky. It was heading for the surface, toward the heart of the galaxy. But what Ron didn't know was that the ship wasn't just heading for the surface, it was heading straight for the Galactic Council, the very ones who had dismissed humanity as weak and irrelevant. The ship's purpose wasn't just to reveal humanity's power, it was to show the galaxy that humanity had never been defeated. It had simply been lying in wait. The ship soared into the skies, and in that moment, Ron felt the full weight of what they had uncovered. This wasn't just about survival, this was about humanity's return to dominance. The galaxy would soon learn to fear the human fleet, just as it had once feared it. In the distance, Ron could see the first sign of movement, military ships, a defense fleet already being scrambled to intercept. But it was too late. The ship had taken off at full speed, and there was no stopping it now. Ron's heart pounded as he stared at the ship disappearing into the sky, his mind swirling with questions. Where would it go next? What would it do when it reached the galactic center? And most of all, what would the aliens think when they finally realized what humanity was capable of? One thing was certain, the galaxy had underestimated humanity, and it was about to pay the price. The ship's mission had begun, and there would be no turning back. As the team raced through the crumbling corridors, dust and debris flying in every direction, the sound of the warship's engines reverberated through the entire planet. The ship was no longer just a threat, it was the harbinger of something far more dangerous. The ground trembled beneath their feet as the massive vessel, now fully operational, soared toward the sky, cutting through the atmosphere with terrifying force. Ron could hardly believe what he was witnessing. They had uncovered a relic of unimaginable power, but he had not anticipated this immediate and unstoppable response. The warship had been waiting for this moment, and now that it had been awakened, there was no stopping it. It was as if the very heart of humanity had been reborn, eager to remind the galaxy of what had been forgotten. Move! Ron shouted, his voice barely audible over the deafening roar of the ship. His team followed his lead, though the chaos was overwhelming, each step a race against time, each tremor a shiver down their spines. They were running toward the surface, but Ron couldn't shake the feeling that they were already too late. The ship's engines glowed brightly, lighting up the darkened sky like a rising star. The city's ruins, once bustling with life, now stood silent and deserted, as though they too were holding their breath. The ancient vessel's power surged, and for a moment it felt as if the entire planet were shaking apart under the force of the ship's ascent. Ron, look! Keel's voice broke through the chaos as he pointed to the horizon. Ron's eyes followed, and what he saw made his blood run cold. In the distance, a fleet of alien warships had appeared, their sleek designs cutting through the atmosphere like predators stalking their prey. They were coming for the human ship, their weapons primed and ready to strike. The Galactic Council had already mobilized, determined to crush humanity's return before it could fully take shape. The aliens thought they could stop it, but Ron knew better, they had no idea what they were up against. We don't have much time, Ron muttered gravely, looking at his team, each fully aware of the gravity of the situation. The battle was inevitable, the only question now was whether humanity's forces were strong enough to hold their ground. The warship surged forward, rising higher and higher, leaving the planet's surface behind. It was an ancient titan, enormous and powerful, a relic of a long-forgotten era. As it descended into space, the ship released a pulse of energy that could be felt across the entire planet. The shock wave rippled through the atmosphere, and the distant alien fleet staggered, thrown off course by the blast. The ship was warning them, declaring its power to the galaxy in a single, unstoppable move. Get to the command center, Ron barked, leading his team through the crumbling ruins. They needed to contact the surface fleet, warn them of the incoming danger, and prepare for defense. But as they reached the final corridor leading out of the underground facility, Ron stopped dead in his tracks. A flash of light illuminated the sky, and the ground shook again, this time, far more violently. The massive warship had deployed its full force, its cannons were charging up. It wasn't just a threat to the aliens, it was a force of nature, a weapon capable of leveling entire fleets in an instant. It was clear now that the galaxy had no idea what kind of power had just been unleashed. Contact the surface fleet now, Ron ordered. He could already see the alien ships closing in on the warship, their weapons trained on the now ascending human ship. The stakes were high, too high, the fate of the galaxy teetered on the edge, and only one side would emerge victorious. Then, something unexpected happened. The human warship fired a single shot, a blinding beam of pure energy. The alien ships could not react. The beam struck the lead warship with a force so powerful that it disintegrated in an instant, its massive explosion lighting up the dark expanse of space.